I'm never quite sure when to start. Are we live now?
Okay, so we are on now, but it just says Rodney DeVerlis live, and Rodney, I can't remember how to just in the edit.
Yes.
Oh, I'm such an uncle.
We need uncles, don't worry.
We do. I think we're live.
Are we? Is anybody on their Facebook? Are we live? Yeah? Saras, yes? I'm not sure if to start.
I'm sorry, I thought I was off mute. Yes, people are posting your live. You're ready to go.
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Black August Book Club. This is a 4-session series of conversation discussion with the authors of this book, Until We Are Free, Reflections on Black Lives Matter in Canada. This is week 3. My name is Michelle Pearson Clark. I'm a visual artist and a writer and educator. And just to situate myself, I'm from Trinidad, and I emigrated to Canada in 1992 with my sister and my mother. And I have to say, today, Canada was her final home. She joined the ancestors 9 years ago today. So she's with me and with us as well. So this is week 3 of 4 weeks, and the theme tonight is performing Black activism, movement, and conversation. I'm really excited that you've joined me for what I consider a bit of an experiment. I have used performance strategies a lot in my performance and in my video work. And so I was really drawn to this theme. It's taken up in the book in all sorts of ways, but particularly for tonight, when I did the research for my MFA thesis in 2015, I made a video installation called Parade of Champions, which actually includes Raven. In my research for that, I learned about something called affective mimicry. And what that is, it's actually a neurological mechanism which cues us to mimic each other as we are in communication. So if you're sitting opposite somebody, like at a cafe, for example, and they scratch their face, you would be prompted to scratch your face as well. So it's just this function in our brain, and it's actually part of how we produce the feeling that we call empathy. So there's a relationship between movement and mimicking and synchronicity and feeling. And I've really been preoccupied with thinking about that since I first learned about it. And I, kind of bring it to bear in the construction of that video installation. And so tonight, when I was thinking about performance and movement, it's such a strong thread throughout the book. And so it gave me the idea for us to try this experiment. And so what I've done is invited Rodney and Raven. They're going to teach us 2 short movement phrases that interpret and respond to excerpts from Rodney's chapter in the book, which is chapter 11, for those of you who are following along at home. It's called Choreographic Design and Performing Black Activism. And then in part 2, after we learn our movements, we're going to be joined in conversation by Dr. Neela Kalita-May and Anik Jordan, and we're going to discuss the themes of performance, the intersections of art and activism. Those of you who were on with me Instagram Live Week last week know that I live a block from a fire station. So that's what that is. So we're going to move, and then we're going to talk about performance and movement and these ideas. I hope that you're wearing something comfy, because the idea really is you're only going to be able to see those of us in the Zoom moving, but I hope that you're going to get up off your couch wherever you are and move along with us in your home. So I'm going to turn it over to Rodney and Raven and let them introduce themselves. Hi. I think you're both on mute. You just want to introduce yourselves to the peoples.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Raven Wings. Hopefully y'all can hear me.
Yep.
I'm a storyteller, artist, dancer, part of the steering committee of Black Lives Matter Toronto. I'm really excited to share this new way of engaging with each other.
Rodney, you're on mute still. Rodney, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Rodney DeVerlis. I'm an artist, an artivist, a human being, and an organizer with BLMTO. I'm so excited to be here as well. Thank you, Michelle, for bringing us together, and I'm excited to move into Groove with you all.
Okay. And we'll introduce our other guests later. We're also joined by Shanice Miller, who's going to be working with Raven and Rodney as we move. So just to start us off, I'm going to read one of the excerpts that we're going to be responding to in a minute. So chapter 11, for those of you who have the book, page 170, the paragraph in the middle. Moreover, Black-centric politi-choreography uses expertly curated movement as tactics. Consider the Black Panther Party, a militant group of Black freedom fighters who shook the world with their tightly controlled show of collective force. A mass movement that pushed toward a new politics of Black power. The Black Panthers were deliberate and meticulous with their use of uniformity. Bobby Seale, co-founder of the party, observes that, quote, strategy in many ways defined the Black Panther Party, as did discipline, end quote. They choreographed their look, vibe, and pace, marching to a pulse in unison and en masse with exacting precision. Ooh, I'm like nervous today. I'm like, I work it out. Today, when Black protesters form a shoulder-to-shoulder barricade opposite riot cops, it is both a physical tactic to maintain control of the space and avoid separation or police kettling, and also a symbolic reclamation of power and a mimicry of police protocol. This power is exuded by the resulting image that the formations create, images that depict Black people standing together with dignity, Black people manifesting their power. So I'm going to turn it over now to Rodney and Raven to lead us through. I'm going to move my computer back a little bit so that I can get up.
Yes, thank you so much for reading that. Everybody, thank you so much for being here with us today. So we're going to do a short movement exploration, creation, phrase creation moment. So we're working, all of us collectively as artists right now. It's not really a class per se, but Raven's going to lead us through a warm up just to get into our bodies. And then both her and myself are going to create these short movement phrases, these vignettes for us to sort of have in our bodies. And then once we have both of those pieces, we will then work collectively together, myself and Raven, to create a cohesive phrase from which we can all repeat a couple of times over and over again. So you'll have a piece of choreography to put in the back of you. I want to introduce Shanice Mitchell. Hi, Shanice.
Hello.
So Shanice will be our assistant, Raven and I's assistant, and she is like you. So she'll be learning it as well for the first time. So if you want to see how something looks in another body, or if there's any sort of questions whatsoever, you can use these as reference points. And then without further ado, I'll just pass it on to my love, Raven.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, my voice is cracking. It does that sometimes. So you can do this either sitting or standing. But before we begin moving, I just want to remind you that you know your bodies better than we know your body. And so just make decisions for yourself that you're comfortable with. Stick to the boundaries that you set for yourself within your movement. It's not about showing off, it's just about expressing and feeling together. But I want us to get us on the same breath first. And so whether standing or sitting, I want you to try and stand as tall as you can within your own spine. So you are sort of stretching your torso to create as much space as possible. And I want you to put one hand over the top of your chest, just so you can feel the breath in your body. We're gonna take 3 deep breaths. I want you to think about the breath coming from the base of the spine. And as you release it, I want you to lift your chin up just slightly to release the air that's stockpiled in your system. Okay? And I'm going to count it in. We're going to breathe in for 2 counts and then out for 2 counts as well. So 5, 6, 7, 8, breathe in. Out. Great. Reset. Breathe in. Breathe out. Last breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Awesome job. Okay, the next thing that I want you to do is we're going to roll our shoulders to the back. So going up and back, up, back, up, back. Just a few, just to oil up the machine a little bit. And you can start to feel that neck wanting to move in circle. And so we're going to do that as well. We're going to head our head all the way around. Just allowing your neck to move and stretch to every corner. Yes, beautiful. We'll do a few to one side and then switch to the other. Doesn't matter which, because we're doing both. Great. Keep that breath moving in your body. Don't forget to breathe. Great, and back into center. The next thing that we're going to do, as you can see, some folks are standing. I'm going to stay seated for those who are staying seated. We're going to move our ribs from side to side. So taking your rib from one side of the screen to the other side of the screen, to the other side of the screen, to the other side of the screen, just so that you can get some movement going on. For whatever movement shows up for you today, this is a way to prepare your body for it. We're going to go into some circles. So going forward, back, and around. Forward, back, and around. Some might call this a whine. But really, you're just trying to stretch all the different parts. If you thought about a jar, you're trying to scrape all the honey from all the edges of it with your ribs and your torso. And you can feel your hips moving as well. Waking up. Great. We're going to take our arms and we're going to stretch them through the top of your screen, as tall as you can. And with this, we're going to lean over to one side. But what I want you to do is think about keeping yourself in this long, elongated position here, and go to the corner of your screen. Just a little stretch to the top of your room. Your virtual room window, and the other side. Just keeping that stretched out. One more time to both sides, just a little stretch. Great. And on the other side, we're going to drop the arms and relax. Wonderful. So I'm going to stand up so y'all can see. Let's see there. All right. So now we're just going to draw a big sort of circle rainbow and then just reach over to the side, trying to push your hand against your knee. You can put it on your waist. Then try and relax your shoulder here. You can relax the neck and stretch over to the other side. Pushing the hips to the opposite way. Really trying to get the stretch right here. Wonderful. Relax the neck. Good. And come up. We're going to do something that's called a plie, which means to bend your knee. And so I want you to think about turning your hips out to the side. And so everything feels like you're showing off your inner thigh. And we're going to spread our legs just a little bit wider, almost like you're riding a horse. You can see Rodney's legs there. And we're just gonna bend. So what I want you to do is put your hands on your waist for me. And your elbows right here are going to be like your ballet bar. They're gonna help maintain your balance. So you wanna push your elbows forward so you can feel a little bit of tension in them. They feel a little bit alive. Great. And so we're gonna bend for 3 and then stretch the legs for 3. So bend the knees, 1, 2, 3, stretch, 1, 2, 3, one more time, 1, 2, 3, stretch, 1, 2, 3, last time, 1, 2, 3, and stretch, 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Does that feel okay, Rodney, for you to...
Definitely. Do y'all feel a little warm?
Totally, yeah.
Joints a little open? Yeah, all right. And so for this part, we're just gonna do the section chunk by chunk. One thing as a preamble that I wanna sort of give is, if we remember back to high school or like elementary school when we were free and we were allowed to be children and sort of do what we would consider interpretive dancing. I think that I really would love for us to get back to that sort of experimental, shameless and shame-free place for ourselves. And so part of that is recognizing that this is a two-dimensional medium, and we're attempting to do a three-dimensional sort of form with that, which means that you might miss something that I've said or something that I've done or something might look differently if you're doing it at home. You might choose to do this sitting, or it might be more comfortable for you to do this laying. However it works for you, it's an open space. It's an open way for you to interpret whatever is happening right here. And I want to also recognize that there's freedom and space to do whatever modifications are needed for you to be able to participate with us freely. One of the things that really sort of, that gets me thinking about this chapter is the sort of blurring the lines between protest and performance and the lack of rules and boundaries. And so even in the creation of this as well, I'm challenging myself to do that. So it's not gonna be a linear interpretation of the text, that there's gonna be some linear moments, but most overall, it's an overall interpretation of the tone of this paragraph specifically. I really wanna thank, the first couple of sentences references the Black Panther Party and references the words militant, Black-centric, freedom fighters, tightly controlled, and collective force. So these, for the first two sentences, Black Panthers, it was a reference to Black Panthers, militant, freedom fighters, tightly controlled, and collective force. Those are the four sort of like images that I'm referencing in these first two. So within the concept of Black Panthers, we're imagining I imagine very sharp, angular, sort of really, really rigid, but really demonstrative movements. So we're gonna start with militant, Black freedom fighters, tightly controlled, collective force. For militant, for militant, you're just going to take this is my right foot. I'm just gonna lift it up. I'm gonna turn it, and then I'm gonna sit right down. And so it's a slow, yeah. And you actually wanna hear like a big drop. Yeah. So I'm gonna be counting to 8 here. It's much simpler to do it like that. So this is gonna be on a 4 count. So if I count you in 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're just gonna sit down. Yeah, nice. Militant, freedom fighters, you're gonna take your same right leg, that's right here. You're sitting here. You're gonna take the right leg and you're just gonna brush. And I want you to just feel the freedom of your hips and your freedom of your legs just brushing aside. It's just this. like if you do it standing, and then you just put a little bit more weight on this leg, just brush the leg, like really sloppily. Boom, boom. And you're gonna do that 4 times. Yeah. One of the things, so, boom, boom, boom. So one of the things that's kind of lovely right here is you're seeing 3 different shoe types.
Yeah.
So you're seeing I have socks, Shanice has runners, and Raven has heels. And so what that does is that we are embracing for me with socks, I'm able to like really flop my foot. With heels, can you show me what you were doing, Raven? She was doing a real nice sort of figure 8.
I just hover a little bit. I just hover the ground.
Yeah.
Pro tips.
That's perfect. And then Shanice, are you thinking more grounded?
I'm really putting more weight in the left for sure, and just like letting my hip do what it wants. Just let that hip go.
I like that sound of the shh. Yeah.
Yeah. I really want to change the contrast between your really grounded place, like whoo, and then you're like the freedom of the hips. So really bring in the like the side, bring in the like, hey, poo poo. Yeah. From the top.
Okay.
0, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. Ooh, tightly controlled. So you're out. Your leg should be out to its side. 4. You're gonna trace this right leg. So it should be your right leg, and pretend like you are doing a big circle that coils onto itself. So what I mean by that is my right leg, there's a string that's gonna take me around, and then my right leg ends up being behind my left leg. Yeah. So you're gonna do a full circle 360. So you end up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That right leg just keeps going. And then you end up being super tight, like tightly controlled. Ooh, so tight. So the leg keeps going in a circle, and it swivels, and you end up being like, oh, tightly controlled.
Okay.
Nice. And then collective force. From here, you're tightly controlled. You're essentially gonna jump right up and be ready. Zoom, ga, 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 ga. And rhythmically, if you could go, zoom, ga, 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 ga. Ga, 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 ga. Yeah, I see you, Anik. I see you, Dr. Knight. I see you. Yes, you too, Michelle. Ga, 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 ga. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a surprise, right? You're tightly controlled, but somewhere in there, boom, there's the burst, bring it from in to out. Ga, 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 ga. And you're like, I'm ready. And that end position is whatever makes you feel like you're the baddest baddie.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that means for you. Rewind from the top.
Okay.
With some counts. 0. Oh, and every move is essentially a 4 count. That's why to make it simple. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep going in a circle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, and then chill 4. 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. So count wise. 1, 2, 3, land 4. Sweep your legs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn around. 1, 2, 3. Step down 4. And then jump 1, 2, and 3. And chill 4. Questions, concerns, secrets, life stories?
I want to be with you. I want to go out there now. Like that last move for me, that last move has a real kind of Trinidad carnival. like you kind of, the way you Lego yourself on the street with your friends, you know, there's a lot of performativity and like, you know, like baiting each other, like especially Juve, right? So
Absolutely. Like we are the Blue Devils. We are the mask. We are the Haitians would call us the vagabonds. We're just like, like ready to like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Feel the energy.
Yes, rewind one more time from the top.
Yep.
Okay. 0, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3. Let me actually make a face on that. Yeah, why not? 1, 2, and 3. And the 3 is the suspension, right? 2 and 3. You think you're done.
Nice.
And then, so how are we doing for memories, brain space? Can we do a little bit more?
I think so, yeah.
Perfect. So the next part that I want to evoke is they choreographed their look, their vibe, and pace, marching to a pulse in unison and en masse with exacting precision.
I got me too, yeah.
You're here. We're gonna get a little closer. We're gonna go, your look. Your
That's
my right hand. It's my right hand. I'm sweeping across, and this is personalized, right? So whatever it needs to be for you. And then style, you're essentially gonna push that left shoulder back, and you're gonna follow, yes, Shanice. Oh, that's nice, Shanice. Could you do that for me one more time, Shanice? That swipe that you, yeah.
Wow.
Really look, style. It just continues. It's like an S, right? Here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just push the shoulder back. That's style. And then pace, look, style, pace, just back it up.
All right.
You're gonna back it up. Quick, slow.
Back up too far.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a back, like, whoa. Hey. Hot energy back to like cool.
Yeah, that's a little bit of that.
So look,
Yes.
style, pace. And then what ends up happening in the pace is that you end up cooling yourself down. Cool.
I see, right.
And now you're like Batman, you know? Now you're just like, yeah, cool. You cooled yourself right down. And my feet I'm just chilling through them. You're using your feet to cushion your drop. So you're using the underside of your feet. You're using your plantar to just really absorb yourself into the ground. Yeah. Okay, put that all together.
Starting from the top.
0, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, circle, 1, 2, 3, 4, jump, 1, 2, and 3, 4. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's keep going. Let's make that much longer. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do 2 full 4s here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, chilling down.
Okay.
And then here is this button just to close it. I love this sentence. I don't know if I can say that about my own sentence, but I really do. This power is exuded by the resulting image that the formations create. Images that depict Black people standing together with dignity, Black people manifesting their power. So we're here. From here, you're gonna choose whichever leg you want to, and you're gonna do a series of like push downs. So grabbing your legs, and you're gonna use that to just plant. Yeah, Shanice, you would be very familiar with this from Bird. So here, So you're going from here, and then it's as if the magnet is sort of, ugh. Right now a magnet brings your legs together, and then the same magnet releases and your foot gets instantly magnetized to the ground. Yeah, exactly like that, Anik. And also I'm going, don't hit your head, but I'm going in to go out. And there's a sense of like the dignity of standing tall. And you want to stand as tall as you can, like taller than like all your ancestors have stacked all together to create the most tallest human being ever. That's it, Shanice. Yes. Yeah, so she's doing what's a high lift. If you feel really comfortable with the stance, you can add a high lift to it. So it's gonna, we're gonna count 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And then this is 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Right. It's a longer one count. It's a longer 4 count. This is 1, drop. Then this is 1, 1, 1, 1. So the first one takes 2 counts each move, and then the tail end is 1 count each. So count, 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 boom, ga, boom, ga.
Okay.
That brings us to the end of that. Rewind it all together, put it all together. Any questions, concerns, secrets, life stories? Hi, Shanice.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to say, like, that's one of my favorite things that I did in Burn Burned, because it tests your balance a little bit, but you feel firm in the bottom, and then so, like, I feel free every time. I don't have long hair anymore, but kind of throwing it, yeah, a little bit of freedom on top. Looking to
yeah, and if
sky.
you're feeling real good, like the actual thing is from here straight to demi point. So that's what Shanice is saying. Like if you want to take it to a little bit more extreme, you want to go from the lower leg, and then you're going right to your tippy toes with the release of the upper body. Yeah, like that, Shanice. That's it. That's it. Can you do that for me one more time, Shanice? Just
Beautiful.
nice. Yeah, and throw yourself off balance. Like go there, go to that place where it feels like you're like, whoa, because that's where we're yes, that's it. Yes, that's it, Anik. Like let it go, let it go. Exactly. One more time from the top.
Okay.
Okay. And then we'll need water break. Let me back it up so you can see both. Okay. 0, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn around. 2, 3, 4. Jump. 2 and up 3. Then wipe it. Then wipe it. 3 and 4. Then chill. 2, 3, 4. Then chill. 2, 3, and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, bah, da. And if you end up on your demis, if for some reason, let me just move that so y'all see, you end up perfectly placed, just like sit there. Just take it as long as you can take that. Solar plexus to the sky. Yes, Raven. Yes, Dr. Nyla. Yes, Michelle. Yes, Anik. Okay, loves. Raven.
Thank you.
Passing it on to you.
Just wanted to check, how are we doing for time?
I think we could probably do another 10 minutes or so, and then take a little transition into.
Great. So mine won't take too long to share with y'all. Thank you, Rodney. That was awesome. I feel all. Okay. So something that speaks out to me is a symbolic reclamation of power. When I create movements or choreography, I choose, similar to Rodney, some buzzwords that give me images and feelings, and so we're gonna utilize that right now. So this whole piece about the power exuded, symbolic reclamation. So let's stand up just a little bit. So we're gonna do the elbows are gonna raise up, so they're by your side to begin with. And then go 1. And then it's almost like you're swimming through an ocean. 2, as your arms wide up. Okay, so one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looking at the ceiling. One more time. So 1, 2, swim. Arms up by your ears. 3. And then when you bring your arms down, your head goes up. 4. How you doing? Okay?
Great.
All right. So one more time for that, and then I'll add a little bit more. As I said, it just gives me a little bit of like a run-on sentence. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you stand 5. So like there, like Rodney there. So you step out with I'm stepping out with my right leg out as my shoulder comes forward. Cool? So it goes out, and then you're gonna take your elbow and toss out to the side. I'm a Janet baby, so. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as you do it, you bring the leg back in. So your leg is out in this position with your shoulder front. So you want to give them the angle of the shoulder here, and then you toss it out. Cool? Is that okay so far?
Yep.
All right. And then there's a part that says Black protesters shoulder to shoulder. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I'm letting my left arm go forward. So it goes forward, right, boom. But I'm bending my knees like that plie we did earlier. So you bend your knees as you do it, and I lean back a little bit. So 1, 2, 3. Real lazy leg.
You better shoulder, Raymond. You better shoulder.
Yes? Beautiful, beautiful. And you can do this in any and all ways. So make it work for you. Cool? So one more time from the beginning, and then I'll add just a little bit more. So we go 5, 6, 7, 8. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Cool? I'm also a Diana Ross baby. So you'll notice that everything is really connected for me. So when I say that everything's really connected, it's almost like one long Whitney Houston note. So you're going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. One more time like that, and then I'll add a little bit more, and then we'll put it all together. 5, 6, 7, 8. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Cool?
Mm-hmm.
Raven,
Yes.
can I ask just around on the 7 and 8, I know you're back, but are you progressively leaning more and more back, or do you find a position and stay there?
I kind of find a position and stay there.
Okay.
But if you want to live your life back there, then
I'm okay. I'll stay right here.
we're keeping it cute today. And then the very last piece, what was the part there? Deliberate The Black Panthers were deliberate and meticulous. So similar to Rodney's one. So you're gonna take your fingers. So after you go 1, 2, 3, you're gonna, it's almost like your lawnmower. So you're gonna step back with your left leg. So step back and bring your shoulders up. 1, yes, like Shanice there. It's almost like you're holding yourself a little bit back. Yes, there you go. So go 1, 2, and so your arms you kind of connect them together like that. So from here, here, and then we're gonna go throw. Yeah. So step back for a second. So we can after this, boom, boom, boom. Then we go ha, 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 ha. And so in this one, you sort of open it, keep a little burlesque pose there. So, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, and stand 5. Just bringing it back to a solid power mode. Cool? And that's what I have for you today.
Yay!
Love that. Oh, do we want to put it together?
Yes,
in
let's do it.
multiple times?
Yeah.
I'll let you choose order, Raven. What do you feel? The order of the sequence. Not to put you on the spot.
Let's do mine first and then into yours, because I feel like mine is like a setup and yours moves us around more.
Can we talk through that just for our collective?
Just count us, yeah.
So we go from 1, 2, 3, 4, step out 5, toss 6, shoulders 7 and 8. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool?
Right, Rodney?
Lovely. And then so from here, we'll go stop 5, stay 6, 7, stay 8, like really feel like you're growing. And then we can go straight from 1, 2. And then it would be great just for timing to pick it up a bit. So if Raven, you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Could we double time it there and just suddenly pick it up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then from here we can go back to the slow down. 7 and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm gonna mess that up. It goes left to right. Left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's stay calm. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're gonna do a full count of 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's rewind just to stitch that beginning up one more time. So that clarifying, we're gonna go for the Ravens count half time or regular time, and then we're gonna pick it up double time here.
Mm-hmm.
Sweep, 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 turn, jump, ka, 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 ka. Once we're here, we're gonna go back to the regular pace. 1, 2, boom, run, 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 run. And then here, we're gonna go back to that regular pace. 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, ga, boom. And end it. And let's end here as if nothing happened, but everything happened.
Not a care in the world.
All right, phrasing it together one more time.
I think now you look, Anik, you ready? We can we can do the whole routine and end?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, love that.
All right, 5, 6, 7, together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We go.
1, 2, 3, up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn 1, 2, 3, 4. Jump. Ka 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 ka. Ha. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. March tall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Awesome.
Now, Shanice, was that me? Did I take too long with? Yes, I did. We'll use your
Yeah,
time.
that's okay. Lots of freedom.
You know what? Let's do. I love that mistake. Mistakes are often very welcomed in this process. So what we'll do is, if you're still here chilling, if you feel it in your soul to go here right away, you can jump right into it. And then we will all meet at the end. Yeah.
Cool. Good.
One last time. Any
One last
questions? One last time. Yes. Any questions or concerns or clarifications?
All right.
All right.
5, 6, 7. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, and 4. Sweep, 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 sweep. Turn around. 2, 4. Jump. Ka 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 ka. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back it up. 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Your own time. 1. 1. Boom, 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 boom. And stay, and stay, and stay, and stay. Take a breath here. You're the tallest that you could ever be. Out, chest out. Exhale and come down.
Thank you. I hope everybody at home is feeling as good as I'm feeling. Grab some water if you need it. Whew. Get a breath. How are you feeling? Welcome, Anik and Naila. I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourselves to the peoples.
Thank you so much, Rodney and Raven and Michelle, for hosting this space, and for you two for bringing us through that very necessary movement. I just realized I haven't moved my body in a long time. To that process. So my name is Anik. I'm an artist, primarily working in photography and performance, based out of Scarborough, or grew up in Scarborough, based out of the city, I guess. And I'm just so happy to be here and to be to have the space to just talk through ideas.
Welcome.
My name is Naila Kalita May. I'm an artist and an associate professor at the University of Waterloo. My areas of expertise are race, gender, and performance. I think a lot about Blackness and freedom. That's really what all of my art and research and teaching is focused on right now, just thinking about Blackness and freedom. And I'm so just grateful to be a part of this space and for that really impactful and meaningful work that Raven and Rodney just led us through. So thank you so much for that.
Mhm. So I just I love the energy that I'm feeling in my body, and like even just with so few bodies visible, seeing us moving at the same time, it just really speaks to the themes and what performance gives us and what performance is capable of, and this relationship between performance and activism. Even though it was something that it's kind of like what I love about this book is there's so many things in this book that I already know, but then you read it and you're like, oh right, So I mean, I don't know everything. I mean, I learned a lot too, but just this relationship that I have felt in my body so often in all kinds of public spaces with all kind of Black folks for all kinds of activism. So for people who haven't read the chapter, we're starting off by looking at chapter 11. And, I was asked last week, because last week I asked authors to identify a passage by somebody else. And Sylvia Argentina asked me, like, well, what's your favorite? And I was like, well, chapter 11. Chapter 11 is my favorite. And so I just want to say, for folks who haven't read it yet, Rodney, you work through in the chapter historically the Black occupation of space, what you describe as a Black-centric politi-choreography, the concept of a movement vocabulary, and then finally you close with how Black Lives Matter Toronto has specifically incorporated these ideas and strategies into your work. So to start us off, can you both just talk a little bit about the excerpt that you just responded to? Why that passage? What are the key things there that centered that passage for you?
I think that there's a couple of passages I was going back and forth between. I really like the thinking about the literal physicality of the Panthers specifically, and how much we, as people that were not even born there, we automatically, by seeing it and by ancestrally being connected to it, we sort of adopt it for ourselves. And I was really curious. I think I'm curious about how much of those physicalities still live within us, and how we, on a moment's dime, on a moments of rapid response, in times when we need to respond, we sort of go to those defaults, and we know how to choreograph ourselves and how to exude tone messaging through our bodies and how our bodies are seen. I think about the Panthers, and the sort of image that white folks often talk about is them showing up to Sacramento, the governor's house armed, and the militancy and the choreography of walking in on together with a beat, with a common style and a common look. And that is all, to me, choreography. That's all performance. Like, nobody wakes up and says, I really want to go and and march in this particular kind of way. But it's I think that those are the reasons that I chose this passage specifically. I think it evokes a sort of movement connection between us and folks that we don't even physically know, but we're tied to by just our sense of how we choreograph ourselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rodney. For me, I also oscillated between many different points in this chapter. But the very beginning of how the chapter began, November 24th, the night was frigid and brisk, set the mood and the tone for what I wanted to offer in terms of movement. It gave me a landscape, and I think the Black Panthers gave us a landscape of understanding power in many different ways, from the rageful ways to the silent and quiet ways, like understanding that power can be silent, can be innate in who you are, and just standing together and for your people. The saying, who's gonna save us? We save us, comes to mind. Been really like thumbing through the choreography. I think in a lot of ways, performance art has been removed from African storytellers. It's been stolen and repackaged in all these kinds of ways to make it feel like artivism is a new concept, when it is actually something that we are reclaiming, that was taken from us, and then sold back to us with the literary canon. Who's allowed, who's not allowed. And so this understanding of infusing it in our movements, in our stories, in the way that we're relating to each other, I think is important to bring back some wholeness into our movements and each other.
Mhm. And it was interesting too for me when that word militancy and like what we were evoking as we were moving. I was thinking about formation, and then Raven, you referenced Janet Jackson, and for those of us who are old enough to remember Rhythm Nation, I remember I am not like a natural dancer at all, and I never really tried to learn choreography. But when Rhythm Nation came out, like that's the thing where I was like in my bedroom, like with the like short little video clip, And there is something about that. It's unfortunate that we have this association with the military, with that type of movement. But loose movements give us something, but there's definitely something about that rigidity and those sharp angles and that and I talked last week and talk always when I talk about my work how obsessed I am with repetition. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to performance, because there's a certain kind of knowledge that's produced through repetition, whether it's repeating a word, repeating an action. And so when you have repeated bodies doing the same action, at the same time, there's just, it's one of the most beautiful things, But I really I was very taken with Rodney, your kind of theorization and conceptualization of this term that you've given us, politic choreography. So I want to read that passage for just so people understand what it is that's the focus of what we just did and leading us into talking about Naila and Anik's contributions as well. So on page 169, for those who are reading along, Black-centric direct action is deliberate about its use of space and intentional about the movement of Black people in that space. In co-creating BLMTO, I believed it was crucial to follow the legacy of Black resistance, for our work to follow a pulse, a rhythm. In our work, music, poetry, rapping, and spoken word are supported by unison gestures, a waving of limbs, stomping to a beat, marching in sync. These actions are artistic and choreographic, but they are also more than that. I identify these as acts of politic choreography. Stomping, marching, raising fists. These movement vocabularies are carefully selected, curated even, to agitate and harness the protesters' rage. These choreographed movement elements, like a raised fist, are crucial in determining the tone of the protest itself. Similar to much choreography for the stage, politic choreography strikes a balance between the planned and the improvised. Black-centric politic choreography is a show of Black power. And for me, that paragraph really just gets at the heart of, as I said, like, I've experienced that, I know that, but I always say to my students, this is what good theory gives you. It gives you a language and a framework for something that you already know to be true from your lived experience, And so for all of you, if we could just talk a little bit about that relationship, that last line, Black-centric politic choreography is a show of Black power. Can we talk about the relationship between performance and Black power in our activism work? And any thoughts I welcome on that relationship?
I'd love to say something about that. I think that relationship is, it's so profound. So much of Black life in white supremacist spaces, in anti-Black spaces, in heterosexist and heteronormative, sexist spaces require Black people to perform something, somebody's fantasy, and very rarely our own.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see and experience performance at the same time that very clear demands are being made for political and social justice, it's seeing an interruption in the performing of other people's fantasies, and seeing performance of the possibilities of Black life as it already is. Mm-hmm. So that it becomes a kind of reclamation of stage space, right? Like, this is not a show for you.
Mm-hmm.
right? This is our showing of ourselves for each other. And there is something tremendous about that, about witnessing that, about participating in it. And through performance, audience members are able to imagine in real ways what could be now and be reminded of what is now. And I think that Black performance, when it is deeply connected to Black activism and pursuits for Black liberation, become a way of seeing what we have not yet lived and remembering what we already have lived and what we've always known to be true, but in real time, in a shared moment. And there is something so energizing about that in an environment with the horrors of white supremacy that are constantly about sucking our energy. So it's amazing to be energized by Black performance that is about Black expression and Black freedom.
And for me, there's something about the performing in mass and the collective movement, as Michelle was talking about. It reminds me of, you know, the work of Marcus Garvey, yes, the work of the Panthers, but also, and for me as a Trinidadian, the carnival procession and the type of power and possibility and world changing and disruption that happens on the road through procession of the carnival. And I think that when we perform and produce our protests as a space of performance, as art, as resistance, as collective mass movement, we create this space of protection that doesn't exist in many other places. So we're almost moving as this mass that's like holding on to ourselves, you know? And that's why at all of our protests, there's dance, there's laughter, there is jokes, there's fun times. There are protest songs that you haven't ever heard before because they're coming out with Beyonce, they're coming out with everybody, right? So for me, like, you know, that is a really special and sacred space. There's something to it that also comes from, like, you know, like the jazz club, the blues clubs, the dance hall clubs, like those spaces that we create that are where our own languages get played out through our bodies, that allows a certain type of freedom that doesn't exist anywhere else. So like I'm so drawn to that, like that type of infiltration, if we call it that, the type of like taking up of at times the gestures that come from policing that you know, we don't really know if it does come from policing or if they've taken it from elsewhere. So like to me, those are the moments that feel so powerful and so full of what else can we make out of this type of energy.
Yeah, I think really conceptualizing, like that line for me, just really summing it up and conceptualizing, you know, this display of Black power, right? And why that's so threatening and why protest gets met with so much force and so much violence. But also thinking about, I think, particularly in the time that BLMTU has been around, I think you've probably had a lot of people who have joined you know, protests or rallies or actions who are new to being in the streets. And because my mom is on my mind, I'm thinking about the first time I took her to a Take Back the Night march. And we got to, I forget where it was, but we got to intersection, and there was because there's a line here where Rodney, you say, you know, it strikes a balance between the planned and the improvised. And so this march had a planned route, but then there was an improvised decision to suddenly sit on the street. And my mother had never done anything like that. And I just remember the look on her face, because what she was feeling was power. You know what I mean? Like she was feeling something that she hadn't, that was not accessible to her, you know, in the world. And so that display, you know, gave her something that it's, until I read this, I was like, oh, right, that's what that was. It gave her power, right? And it was, I think she was like almost giddy, right? Like she was intoxicated with the fact that she could do that she could sit in the street with all of these other women and stop traffic. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I feel like that even as we were speaking, Michelle, I think about safety as well, that comes in similarly. There's like when we're on stage, I feel so much safer when you're with an ensemble of people that even if we're improvising and making it up, there's a sense of we're all in there together. We're trying to harness a sort of collective pulse. So you feel safe to experiment, to jump in, to just be bold because you're with a collective. And I feel like that is, if I extend the metaphor to the street, you know, we're all these live actors and performers working together. And because we're all in the performance together and we're like, we've generated energy, we've generated a pulse, I feel so safe to be around you and to do perhaps a tactic that's not necessarily comfortable with me, because I know that you're in it with me. One thing that also I think through is Aisha Sasha Jones talks about, I've heard her articulate and talk about this idea of getting ourselves into the trance of Black movement together. And you get to a point of almost trance-like, ritualistic, sort of ethereal, outworldly place. And I honestly think the only two places I've experienced that has been on stage and as some protests where you surrendered beyond yourself because we're all together, either repeating the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, or your feet get so numb from stomping that in a way, there's something about safety and ritual that I think about as well as when you've just talked.
Yep. You haven't been to Juve in Trinidad then?
Not Trinidad, sadly. Not Trinidad. I've done
I say, it was,
a lot of the precursors, but not the mother and the beast as well.
But it's Juve, and a few years ago I went to Juve for the first time in 15 years and went, 2 years in a row. And that's always just the thing that comes in my mouth. I'm like, Juve is freedom. Like it really to me, it feels like that's the freest I've ever known. You know what I mean? That moment, that 4 6 hours, depending on how much you drink, what time you have to get home. But I always feel like I wish every Black person could experience that. You know what I mean? I just want to like pat everybody in the plane and take, you know what I mean? Like take everybody down for that. Yeah. Sorry, Naila.
No. I was thinking that performance is such an important part of so many Black cultures. It is an integral way of knowing ourselves, of connecting with multiple generations. It's a part of so many aspects and components of our lives. And so it becomes a way too for so many of us who are speaking languages that are colonial, that are not our own, and have had to fashion words for centuries out of languages that have been meant to rob us of all of our humanity. And so there's something about performance where, in a way, you get to wrestle language. You get to manipulate it. You get to work and make performance do things and symbolize things and make not one person, but multiple people become more than what any one person could be, And so through that movement and that kind of collective action, I think that there's a way that we both connect to like ethnicities of Blackness and ways of Blackness and Black performance cultures that are ethnically specific, but that are all like so deeply entrenched in the need for performance, right? So there's that sharedness of it. And on top of that, we get to do things that allow us to manipulate or circumvent or like just not even bother with language, like to just kind of be like, chum, and I gotta use a whole heap of words. Like we're just gonna keep saying these 3 words over and over again because we're done talk, like there's something about that too, where you can make language do that in performance. I think an activism that is really powerful as well.
Well, I made a 10-minute work that is just that.
Right. Yes. Yes. Right.
For precisely that reason, right? That performance of that utterance is all you need, really. Yeah.
Like the brilliant performance of Defund the Police. Where it's just like this is like we're just gonna break this down into a very clear, concise. This is what we're up. This is what it's about. Like that kind of and when it becomes clear in a way that can be used beyond a city, beyond the municipal politics, right? That it can be a way of performing across borders, real and imagined. It's it's really powerful. It's a tremendous moment and to be here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Denise.
Yeah, I'm Shanice, and I had my bio, a little piece of my bio up here in case people wanted to know who I am. And I'm looking at the words like professional performance and like, talk the talk, but if you can't make people feel anything with you, I'm like, what professional what? Like, so I'm connecting a lot with what you're saying, Naila. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just for me lately, the decolonizing of my own professionalism within performance. I mean, like it's fraying me out every day, but it's like, it means so much to be heard and to decol it, when you don't need words, like all we have are connected, so rooted in our origins is movement and music and things that don't involve words. So for me growing up training in a white centric place and feeling like I'm silencing pieces of myself, I'm just like, what is the point of me dancing if I'm not speaking something from my soul? I'm so nervous to be speaking with you guys. So I'm getting all shaky, but I created a group a little while ago. It was ART, Artists Resisting Tradition. But what tradition was I needing to resist when I fell in love with jazz and found that jazz is really where I belonged, and then found out that my ancestry is Ghanaian. I was like, oh, there we go. That's why I'm resisting against a tradition that on a land I was born on. Just pieces of me feeling silenced where I wanted to uplift and empower. And the joy that I get now is not valued the same way as other joys that white centric dancing has. But I'm working through it and resonating with empowering and uplifting and exchange that is just bringing people up. It's not show and tell. It's not showing off. It's not what I can do by myself. Like, what can we all have? Yeah. So, yeah.
Tradition is a word that power uses when it doesn't want to give up power, That's how it's always been done. Tradition, yeah. It gets weaponized against us in all kinds of ways, for sure. So,
right.
All right, I want to move on to chapter 19. So Rodney, you end chapter 11 with highlighting some of BLMTO's recent actions, including the blockade of the 2016 Pride Parade, which is the focus of Naila's chapter 19. And in that chapter, as you write, you both analyze and contextualize this action within a framework of Black public performance of presence and dissent. So the two excerpts I want to point to that I'm going to just read. So first on page 268, the top, you write, part of what makes the activism of Black Lives Matter Toronto compelling is that not only do they take on the expected battle with the predominantly white mainstream, but they also do what the Black arts movement failed to do. They challenge the heteronormativity and patriarchy of Black communities that in this case are in Canada. In other words, Black Lives Matter Toronto's sit-in at Pride was a performance that disrupted the non-Black and Black status quo. In this regard, it can be called a disruptive performance, one that had the ability to simultaneously rupture both the non-Black and Black status quo. You go on to touch on further down, and the consequences of these bold radical imaginings include alienation and attack from multiple sides, as evidenced by even a cursory analysis of the comment sections of the articles, Facebook pages, and Twitter accounts of Black Lives Matter Toronto and Pride Toronto. And then over on page 269, at the end of the page, these moments of public performances of presence and dissent that minoritized people are routinely called upon to do are, like most performances, not for them. They're in service of the audiences, for them to witness, respond, connect with, and ideally change. But at what cost to the performers? This is perhaps the central question that arises when art and politics intersect to address what the stakes of civil rights and full expressions of humanity are for Black, queer, trans, and feminist people in Toronto and beyond. So I want to draw a linkage between these notions of disruptive performance that disrupts both the Black and the non-Black status quo, and then this risk that is borne, this price that is paid by the performers. And you do briefly touch on it, but I just wonder if you talk a little bit more about how the cost is greater given that you're disrupting, you know, both the Black and non-Black, and then also for all of us to talk about what strategies are available to Black, queer, trans, and feminist people to cope with this impact or cost of what Naila has termed the disruptive performance.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not sure that the performances are not for the performers as well. So I would pause on my own analysis and pull that back, you know, because that's such a personal thing and one that I could never know.
Yeah.
And so I stand corrected there. I listen to my own words, yeah, what publishing means.
But just to say, I feel like the approach is learning, you know, and so I appreciate that sharing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like because we change. Yeah. So okay, so a couple of things. One is that I would say that there is a tremendous cost to performers, right? We hear about like the hyper surveillance, you know, the many ways in which the state makes life for all Black people difficult, but particularly difficult for Black grassroots organizers, activists, artists, and not just grassroots, right, but people who are politically minded and socially engaged. And so that has been true for a very, very long time. And we know, I'm thinking now of Pascal Deverlis's resignation letter, right? That speaks of some of those very real costs. And we've seen that over generations and over centuries. And so it is, you know, I don't know that it's about martyrdom, but we would be like naive to not really appreciate what it means to have people in our generations who are willing to do this kind of work, and to use performance in ways that disrupt, that are saying to you know, and in the case of Pride Toronto, to have to perform a sit-in at a sit-in. Like, you know, when you have to pull up at the sit-in and be like, yo, like what, this is a mess, you know, like, I think that, and so often that's what Black people have had to do, and particularly Black, trans, and queer people have had to do in all of the political organizations that we're a part of, like regardless, like the labor union, everything, it's always the same, like having to do the sit-in at the sit-in. And so when I think of the Black plume, like the black pen, and having people sign, like that performance of saying like, we are going to rewrite this, like we're going to write this, and not performing the expected performance. They're supposed to just be honorary members, right? Just be happy to be there, just skin teeth and be glad and be happy, and just, you know, Hoya Kanda,
tradition.
Wave 2 waves, take 2 pictures for Toronto Star, stand in front of 2 TD Bank posters, and wrap it up, right? Like that's what the honor, that's what they're supposed to do. And again, it was about disrupting the performance and being like, yo, we're stopping this show. because we're underfunded and X and Y and Z. And we've been talking about this in all of the channels that we're supposed to talk about this, and not change, right? And so I think that that's when you get the disruption, and it becomes a public place of performance and a creation of a public square. To flip the public square on its head. Like, we're not gonna just celebrate and look at how we have racial diversity in Pride Toronto, like you're gonna just be this beautiful moment. No, Black Lives Matter was like, no, we're gonna take this moment to say, look at all you haven't been doing and what needs to be done. And can we finally force these commitments that y'all have been making and rescinding? Because Pride Toronto said all that afterwards. Yeah, they were like, yeah, you've been talking about this from a long time, and we haven't done anything about it. So sometimes performance is about like, stop the show, you know? And that kind of like the draw bad card, like draw a card on people, you know, spill the tea, whatever the saying is, just to flush it out, and I think that it was a brilliant flushing out that had huge change, that made huge change, and that made people in Toronto well vexed. But enough people in Toronto have been well vexed forever. Like, Black people in Toronto have been well vexed from time. You know, so it can't just be we one who are always vexed and quiet.
I think what I appreciate with what you draw there, I think one of the, not dangers, but one of the things with performance and activism is, because of the choreography, because of the rhythm, because of the beauty of it, sometimes that cost that you so clearly mark is elided, right? So when it's more just kind of scrappy or whatever, people are like, oh, activists are putting their bodies on the line. But when it's, you know, when it's a beautiful like costume and like, you know, decorative, that sometimes people, I think, oh, like, I think they forget there is still a cost, right? The people are still putting their lives on the line, even if this looks pretty, even if this is choreographed beautifully, even if this feels like you're an audience member taking in a show, that cost is still there. And that's what I feel like you help us get to, right?
And also too, it's this notion that like performances are supposed to just leave you entertained and feeling nice all the time. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
You know, this kind of, and particularly that expectation around Black performances, and they're just meant to reinforce whatever fantasies, again, stereotypes and tropes that people have about what Black life is. You know, one of the things that I feel like white supremacy does so well is that it collapses the nuances of Blackness. You know, like, we just don't have room to be the nuanced, complex people that we are. And so, yeah, I don't know. The performances just open up so much more. And I think that audiences, like, just, we're not here, it's not always about enjoying what you see. And that's kind of a failure of the state, right? To imagine performance is only, and to teach children that performance is only about like reaffirming their own fantasies or reaffirming particular ideas, as opposed to thinking of performance in the ways that it's been used in so many of our cultures, which is about like a kind of place of interrogation and of imagining something different.
You just mentioned kids. You just mentioned kids there, which leads me to my next question. Anik, obviously you've been involved with BLM in all kinds of ways, but in the book, you highlight your role as documenter in almost at the end, chapter 22, which features a photo essay on Freedom School. And on page 313, you say, as I go through these images, I think about what it means to photograph a Black child. What angles do we choose? What visual languages take precedence? What symbols and body language do we note, and how are they read? As a Black photographer, I realize how sensitive I become to guarding the practice of photographing our children as an act of protection. And obviously I work in photography and video. I think about representation all the time. And connected to performance, I feel like the majority of folks who have seen many of the performances that we've talked about tonight and are talked about in the book, they encounter them through the documentation, right? They encounter them through the image, through the photograph, through the video. And so I really appreciate your thoughtfulness there and the responsibility that you're taking in that role. So I just wanted to ask you, and for anybody else, what would you like all of us to think about as we document future actions on our cameras and cell phones? Like, what questions should we be asking ourselves before we push that shutter button? Because we know it's not just the official documentation that gets circulated. We know that, you know, when something is happening, everybody pulls out their phone, those images are circulating. You know, I just felt that very recently where, you know, I took 4 photographs of the artistic intervention on the statues. And, you know, those images were circulated over and over. And it's just quick snaps I took on my phone, but because few people were out on the street that day and the city cleaned things up fast, right? And so those images become like my choice of framing and all of those things become the thing that communicates this performance to thousands of people, right? So that responsibility is not just in the official photographer's hands, it's in all of our hands, right? So what are the things we should be thinking about? What are questions we should be asking ourselves as we document performance going forward?
Wow, that's such a good question. And part of me thinks about the different types of audiences that you are documenting for. So for me, and particularly in documenting the work of BLM, sorry, my phone, particularly in thinking about documenting the work in the streets of BLM and the work of Freedom School, I in my mind, there are multiple audiences. And one of the primary audiences are for Black people and for the like a Black Toronto sort of archive of what these moments look like. And so for me, I'm not necessarily self-editing as I'm taking these images. I'm taking almost as many images as I can to show what's happening within the surrounding area but are not necessarily available publicly, right? Like, and for me, that's part of that is knowing that so many of us aren't able to be there for the type of risk that's involved in being present in these spaces. And so I do want to document not just the not just the statue, but like what type of vehicles were the officers using? What was the street like? What was it like down the street? What was my route like getting there? What kind of, like, I document down to, what kind of music is playing on the radio as I'm coming in and leaving. So there's lots of different pieces that sort of come through with the documentation that doesn't become public. But for me, there may be a day when it comes where that is available publicly, but I think about what is it that we want to know that surrounds that moment, that is not that just that sensationalized moment that the media picks up, or that one become like that image that becomes iconic of what this represents. Because we want to know more than that. We want to know, what did it feel like? What was it like for that documenter? And so those are the kinds of things that I try to think about when I'm doing it. So it's not just, it isn't just for me, just that moment. And so like that's sort of the main audience. I really want to get a feel for it because, and I think about that because I look at images of what my mother has. She has a single image of herself as a child. I ask her about images of protests in Trinidad in the 60s and the 80s. There's very few available that show like the breadth of what people were experiencing surrounding coups or whatever was happening. So I really want to think about how I fill in those gaps and allow us to see people and the documenters as people, and not just as people who risk so much of themselves to do this work, but like the human sides of us, the fun sides of the things that people don't see. So like that music, for example, as I'm coming in and leaving. So there's that side, and then there is a side where I am jointly thinking about how do I ensure that what I document is not furthering a tradition of documenting Black people in harmful ways. And that is as a photographer, as somebody who captures a moment in time, that split second, like that becomes a type of responsibility because we're always feeding into a tradition of imagery that people look at and reference, even if it's subconsciously, of what this moment might mean. So I think about that too. So if I'm documenting, for example, I have this image, one of the images in the book of a child oh, actually, I'm not sure if this image made it into the book, but it's a young boy and he's standing primarily in the shadow, but then there's a bit of light that crosses his body, but it's in an X.
Mm.
And I sat with that image for a very long time to think about what this means.
Mhm.
What am I doing? What is this light doing on this child's body? How is that being read? Who is the audience then that I'm privileging in saying that, no, this is just a child and this is sunlight that's coming in on this child's body, right? And at the same time, I'm still holding on to, but there's an X. These are crosshairs on a little black boy's body. So how do I sort of come to terms with that? And so I left that image in there, or that's one of the images that's most special to me, because the choice behind it, behind keeping it, behind leaving the edit, the crop in the way it is that knowing that this is a child, that is light on this child's body. And I'm gonna allow the child to have light touch their body without having to give power to the reference of what that might mean. Right. And I know, regardless, that people are going to still subconsciously have that reference, that's there, I see it as well, but I'm also making the choice to say, but you have to see something else when you look at this child. So and I think we have to, or maybe not we have to, but there will always be those multiple types of audiences, those conflictions with how we see images, what we make, who we're making it for, but who we know is taking it up, who are we feeding by making this, but who's writing the critiques about it. So, it's always there, but for me, I have to make the choice of, okay, I see this, but I see this too, and which one do I want to privilege? Is the risk greater for me to know that people see these crosshairs versus me saying that, well, you have to see something else within this image as well?
Yeah.
I love hearing this perspective. I've had a few interactions lately where people posted images of my body without my consent. And of course, there's that extra level of white people posting Black bodies. That's icky, to say the least. But just the amount of self-surveillance that Black people already have, the self-surveillance and awareness. So hearing the depth of your thought process, Anik, is like just mind-blowing. Like, there are people here doing the work, the consent, before it lands anywhere. I just love that.
I always tell my students, not everything needs to be seen, not everything needs to be shown, and that's a lesson that it goes against. It's like a colonial value. More is like more knowledge is just sort of objectively good, like everything, and it's like, it's not actually like refusal, like, some things are just for certain eyes, like all of those are things that I think we all need to reflect on as we're making images going forward. But just in the interest of time, I just want to make sure I get to my last question for starting off with Raven, because so clearly the public sphere is key to everything that we're talking about, right? We're talking about performance in public space. And I love in your conversation in chapter 8, when you're talking with Cyrus on page 134, Cyrus asks you about your practice, and you say very simply, I'm a dancer. And so a lot of my work is about how we show up in public, how we're allowed to show up in public, the stories that are hidden, and the stories that we want people to know about us or even share within our own community. But just that first part, how we show up in public, how we're allowed to show up in public. I've been thinking a lot about public space and public art, and obviously we're living through a summer of crises and pandemics and uprising, where both public space and public art are being questioned and challenged and transformed, like in the moment, right? Like we're living through that. And so I want to start with you, but also invite anybody to talk about the ways in which the energy of public performance or the role of public performance in BLM's activism has shifted or morphed as public space has become, fraught with the threat of transmission of a virus, as public space has become sort of newly threatening to some people, as public space has become both, for some of us, our workspace, our recreation, it's taken on so many other, it's become so many things, like it's just happening really rapidly. And so thinking about what we've been talking about tonight in performance, I'm just wondering how you've experienced or how you anticipate how these shifts are affecting or related to the role of BLM's, performance in BLM's work.
Wow. So a lot of the way I answer questions comes from my own lived understanding of the world. And so as a Black trans person, there's already a microscope on my life, my choices, my experiences, and they have real impacts. And so because Black Lives Matter Toronto centers the individuals who are a part of it, and the larger Black communities, we're always conscious of how we show up in public. We have to be, in terms of understanding the public dialogue around our movement, around change, around abolition, around defunding the police. Like our strategies have to be sort of airtight in the way that we show up in public. And so one of the things that we've been really, really conscious of is making sure that no matter what the action looks like in public space, that we are still holding tight to our traditions of colors and flashiness and performance, but it is done in a way that we are all safe.
Mm-hmm.
And are wearing our face mask, for example, but the face masks match a color that everyone is wearing together to sort of to thread this link of Black race.
Yeah.
and we understand that, and I mean collectively, we understand that people look at pretty things. And because of that, if you make it pretty enough, people will sort of look at it or pay attention to it, even if for a second. So even if for a second someone saw the defund the police letters on the ground, it offered something really specific to the movement. Someone else has that in their mind about what else is happening in the world, what people are asking for, what does that even mean? And so it offers some real questions to help folks other than Black folks interrogate their own behaviors and participation in white supremacy. So for us moving forward, we just will continue to move in ways that reflect the reality of what we're going through.
Yeah.
In terms of just like I saw a meme or a video of someone saying, just because you're over it doesn't mean the pandemic is over. And it's true, like it's not over because it's the end of summer.
Yeah.
It is still a real thing that's affecting real people's lives. People are still dying every day from this. And so, and the truth is we're also dying from, anti-Black racism, systemic violence, and the police. And so it is not a matter of like wanting to be out there. But if we are being murdered in our sleep, then the rest of us who are awake have to get out there and do something about that to make sure that that's not happening anymore. And so, performance is used in all kinds of ways in how we relate to it. But really, it's about being. It's about being in the center of a moment. It's about reflecting what you see. And I think that performance has been opened up in this time period to involve more of that, actually. So those of us who are doing that work and were criticized for it before it was popular to do it, like Lauryn Hill, for example, are sort of now being looked at like, oh, maybe we should have been listening to this. Maybe this is what, the rest of us are sort of having to move into. So I think it's an interesting time where people are sort of folding in on themselves.
Right. Any other thoughts on that before we wrap up? Any other comments or ideas or thoughts that people wanted to touch on that I didn't get to in my questions? Well, Naila, I hate to put you on the spot, but I've read a lot tonight, and I would like to ask if you would end by reading chapter 9, Relentless. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Page 151.
Thank you. Hmm.
There's performance in this poem, and we read it last week on Instagram Live, and I feel we could read it every week. And now that we have you here, if you would do us the honor.
I'm honored. I'm honored. Mhm. This Blackness, this realness, this queerness, this rising, bridge building, lying, tongue holding, this doing, making, spending, breaking, this loving, sharing, releasing, feeling, this working, marching, dreaming, grieving, this being, jaw clenching, questioning, truth telling, this life, this erasure, this hope, so much, demands so much. And so we summon stillness, enter silence, hear quiet, and know freedom. We are freedom. Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for your generosity and vulnerability, particularly those of us who are not dancers. Thank you to the dancers for leading us through. This was filled my heart on a night when I really, really needed it. So good night, everybody. Next week, we wrap up with a conversation on Black and Indigenous futures. And we'll end the series there. But for now, good night.
Good night.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, we're not live anymore. Oh wait, no. Yeah, we're not live anymore. Okay, good. I can't hear you.
I think it says we still are, perhaps.
Oh.